Good afternoon and welcome everyone to this fantastic masterclass this afternoon, the Succeeding in Business Masterclass. I'm very excited to welcome our panel here this afternoon. This masterclass is actually in conjunction with Manly Wellness, a new initiative being driven through Manly. I've done a little bit of research on this and I'm really excited by it. It's all about health, wellness, mental wellness, physical wellness, and to keep an eye out, guys, for that coming through the social media channels, also through ICMS and locally. I'm really excited by this collaboration, and it's this kind of thing today where the ICMS in the Northern Beaches gets to put on these kind of events in collaboration with fantastic partners all across Northern Beaches. So I'm really excited about that. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Phil Watson. I work here, but previously I actually worked in the sports industry. I used to work at Football Australia, so this panel today is quite close to my heart. I'm really excited by it and for it. I used to be team manager of the Socceroos for a while, A-League operations, and also Asian Champions League, amongst a few other things. So this today will give you a really good insight into what it's like to be in the business of sport. Really, really big business, a multi-billion-dollar industry all around the globe. If anyone says there's not a job in sport, then they're not looking hard enough, because there's a lot of money to be made in sport, which is really, really exciting. And I truly believe that sport is the best business model for any business to operate from. There's no other business model in the world that gets more public scrutiny day in, day out than a sporting organisation. Every day, socially, commentary all across the board, you have to be your A game to perform in the sports industry. So I'm really excited for this panel today. I think you guys are going to learn a lot from it. So without further ado, I would love to introduce to you the panel for this afternoon. So firstly, we have Dr. Trevor Clark. He is the undergraduate dean here at ICMS, but just as impressively, he's also an ex-rugby league player, holder of a master's degree in sport and exercise science, and has also obtained his PhD with a focus on sport and health from Massey University. Today, he's the perfect MC for this masterclass, and as you'll see from his demeanour, he's a delicate balance between academic and real professional sport experience. So Dr. Clark, welcome to the stage.
Thank you, Phil.
Look at that balance. Beautiful. I'd also love to welcome this afternoon Samara. She is a Senior Brand Partnership Manager at Football Australia. Not only does Samara bring a wealth of experience from the sports industry, ensuring high-level commercial deals and sponsorship rights are delivered to all stakeholders nationally, she also brings top-level experience from the corporate sector, working for big brands such as Telstra, Optus, and also the Starlight Children's Foundation. So Samara, welcome. Next we have David Boyle, who is the NRL High Performance Manager. David is also an ex-NRL player for South Sydney, the New South Wales Blues, New South Wales Country and Hull Football Club, with over 190 caps to his name. In the high-stakes sport of NRL, ensuring that players are performing at their peak on and off the field is big business and critical to club and country success. So welcome, Dave. Next is Andrew Fraser. He's the founder of Sunstar Entertainment. Andrew has over 30 years specialising in sport and entertainment. His clients include elite players such as Mitchell Starc, Alyssa Healy and Meg Lanning, and also the solo sailor Jessica Watson. If you ever wanted to know what the business of sport is like behind the scenes, I'm more than sure Andrew has a few stories he could tell you, which maybe you can get out of him off the record in the networking session at the end of this panel. So Andrew, welcome. And last but definitely not least, Josh Hussey. Josh has had experience being the head of elite player wellbeing and education for the West Tigers from 2017 all the way through to 2019. He's also a former professional athlete with a proven track record with over 15 years of professional experience in the industry, from coaching, development, player pathways, and also elite athlete wellbeing, which is very, very important these days. Josh is now the Director of Athlete Wellbeing and Engagement Programs at Athletes for Life. So Josh, welcome. Dr. Clark, over to you.
Thanks, Phil. That's an amazing job you've done today. All right, welcome everybody. Great to be here. First things first, I'd like to reflect on a few things just to introduce what's going on today. Why are we here? And I look around the room and I see quite a number of faces that I recognise. So it's good to see those students that are here, and also the people that have a real passion for the topic that we're going to talk about today, sport. Not just sport, but sport and business, and sport and leadership, sport and management, and so all these things that are going to combine all this knowledge in the room. And I'm really looking forward to hearing what our guests have to say, because there's so much, as I say, so much important information that you can gather from what's being said today. All right, so that's the important thing. The thing about sports people is that we always have a really strong focus. Yep. And I know that you're sitting in the room thinking, yeah, I've got that strong focus. I've got that. We also have a really good open mindset. So we're always looking for the positives. Again, we're thinking, wow, that sounds a little bit like me. So the idea that we can become really strong leaders. Yep, in the industry, not just this industry, but lots of connected industries. If we look at what our guests have done today and taken where they've come from and where they've arrived to, where they're currently at. And that's just, the journey still continues. So it's going to be interesting what information we hear back from our guests today. So just the context today. Firstly, I'd like to acknowledge the Gamigal people that are indigenous to this land, traditional custodians of this land, on which we gather here today, pay my respects to elders, past and present, and I extend that respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islanders that are here today. Okay. Alrighty, so we're actually going to kick it off now, guys. So I'll just open with a basic question for everybody about your journey. So in fact what I'll do is I'll just start quickly with my own journey, and that'll provide a little bit of context. Now I know a lot of you students have heard my journey, but what I'll just break it down into little bite sizes, and this is the information that you might actually gather is a pretty common theme around the table today. Alright, so started in sport young. Why? Because I love it. Everybody loves sport. Well, most people love sport. But sport is so big. It's not just what you do when you're playing sport. Okay, so there's all the connected things that you have to obviously make that have an impact on you through sport. So it's the mums, the dads, the driving, the training, the preparation, the clothing, the shoes, have to be the right brand. There's lots of things that are going on that make the athlete. But going quickly from the athlete, how do we transition from being an athlete? So from playing sport, transitioning out of sport, we've got some real good experience in the room here around that. I know Josh is going to really focus on that aspect of that transition. So going from playing sport to what next? So Phil's little journey that he spoke about earlier, how he came from being a student in that frame and then went on to industry, worked at Football Australia and did lots of other things in the industry, so and at a high level as well. Phil finds himself now here at ICMS, and what's he doing? He's actually in the recruitment space, and a lot of you students know Phil because of that. Yep, Phil would have recruited you guys specifically into these programs. So his transition, and this is where Phil is now. This is part of his journey. So my journey is I've gone from playing sport to coaching, training, managing, and teaching. All of those that I've done as part of my role in sport. I find myself here today as Dean Undergraduate at ICMS, and I'm sort of connected to sport. Well, I am. I'm connected to sport. I'm wholly invested in sport. So that's basically why I'm here today, to be able to host this panel, and that's enough about me. Let's get into the guests and find out how they got their journey, where their journey has taken them to they're currently supposed. So Samara, I'll start with you, seeing as though you're closest to me. We know your name, but please tell us your story. Tell us a little bit of story about your journey into the business of sport. Thanks, Morley.
I started my journey in sport as an athlete as well. I represented Australia in water polo for a very long time. Again, grew up in a house where sport was religion. Everyone in my family, mum, dad, brother, aunts and uncles, all have represented at least one country and at least one sport. It was just what we did, and we loved it. But I got a career-ending illness right before the London Olympics, and like many athletes, you often don't get to choose when your professional athlete career ends. Which was very hard for me. I didn't watch the London Olympics. I didn't want anything to do with it. And then after a year of feeling pretty sorry for myself, I was like, you know what? I spent my whole life training to go to the Olympics. I'm going to go about this another way. And I got into the sponsorship side of sport. I always knew I wanted to work in sport. I knew I wanted to work in the more business and marketing side as opposed to the coaching side, which is where a lot of my family are. And I worked at Telstra and Optus looking after their really big portfolio of a lot of sponsorships from the AFL, NRL, ballet, netball, surf lifesaving, Olympics, Paralympics, cricket. And I did end up going to the Olympics, but for work. So it was kind of this holistic journey to do that. I went to the Rio Olympics for work.
So you got paid to go, basically?
I did, yeah, which was more than some of the athletes probably got. And again, watched my team there, and that was kind of a final healing process on that. But I love sport. I love that the product that I market is something that people love. It's not, I worked at Telstra and Optus for a long time. My mum still calls me to try and get her to help fix the internet, and I'm like, I don't know anything about the internet. But it was great to be able to market sport instead of a handset or a shampoo or something that, people just use day to day, and be able to use things that people love to get them drawn into a brand. So that's what I love about the sponsorship side of sport, that it's about using something people love to draw them into a brand. And I've been very fortunate in my current job where I look predominantly after the Matildas, and we're in a unique place where the Matildas have twice the amount of sponsors than the Socceroos.
So your job's easy.
Yeah, everyone wants a piece of us. But yeah, it's a very interesting time for me at the moment with this shift into the growth of women's sport, even over the last 4 years.
Massive.
Yeah, the Matildas played in Queensland 4 years ago when I first started, and we had just under 10,000 people come. We played last month in Brisbane, and we had 25,000 people show up. So it's been a very interesting time, and having sponsors is a big part of driving that. CommBank being the new naming rights partner, were the first brand to put the Matildas on a billboard.
Sure.
So yeah.
Brilliant. Thank you, Samara. That's a good introduction. So Boyley, same question, my friend. Basically tell us a little about your story and how you arrived into the business of sport.
Okay, like Samara, I just love sport. I love surfing, and I love rugby league, but I didn't grow. So I had to stick with surfing, and all of a sudden I grew 6 inches and started putting on some weight. And then I was working at the Steelworks as an electronics technician, and then got an opportunity to train, and that's the only thing I had going for me. I was fit and I could take a hiding. So I got to start with the Rabbitohs and got on very well with the sponsors, and started developing a relationship with the sponsors, and they'd take a lot of time out for us and just give me advice. So I started an MBA online, not like you guys there. We used to get big boxes and do it all on paperwork, and they had computers still, but they didn't have mobile phones. And that gave me a lot of confidence. But then I wasn't really satisfied. I started working at South Sydney, doing marketing, and I did the MBA, but I could only see myself getting fatter and not doing any training. So then I started working in high performance, in strength and conditioning. So I started working at the club, then I went to the St George, and I've had 7 clubs since then. So there's no full-time jobs with the coach goes, you go. So that's something I've learnt. But then I started picking up jobs at, I went down from St George, I went to the Steelers, and then the Steelers had the Illawarra Hawks there, so I started doing the strength and conditioning with the Hawks as well. So it gave me another code. I was getting out of one plane from Townsville and hopping another one to go to Perth, and picking up everything, so getting a lot of experience. Then we've got the Australian Strength and Conditioning Association, so I got on the board of that, and I've been on that since 2004. And since then I've gone back to South, so I've been with Rugby Australia, and teaching at another college, and then got a tap on the shoulder 3 years ago and asked if I wanted to join the referees, look after their programs. And I thought, wow, I've ignored them for 42 years. I don't know. But anyway, I started there, and prior to that, Trev talked me into doing a Masters by Research that I've just completed on a study on the NRL. But I guess my message to us is, to you guys, is the world's an opal, and just go and get out and collect it. If you think you can achieve and believe, you'll achieve and you'll get there. So, yeah, take it on.
It's gold, Borley. Andrew.
Thanks, David. Mine's a little bit different,
Yep.
a bit diverse. In fact, 40 years ago, I left school across the road here. This was a priest training college at the time, so we spent a lot of time in this building, which is absolutely magnificent,
Yep.
and everyone at ICMS has done a great job here. Like everyone in the room, sports been in my DNA. I think since I was born, cricket largely. I've been involved with Manly Cricket Club for 40 years, been president for almost 20. After leaving school here and bumming around and surfing and doing that sort of stuff, wasn't quite sure what to do, like a lot of you guys in the room today. And an opportunity came up to run an indoor cricket centre, which started up in Brookvale from Mike Pawley, who's a bit of a legend here on the Northern Beaches. And didn't go for it initially, and then the owners asked me to interview, but I was only 19. I thought it was out of my depth, and so I went for the interview and they offered me the job, and it's probably the best move I've ever made in my life. It's I spent over seven years there, learning all about dealing with people, marketing, and in those days there was no computers. So if 2,000 people a week and 200 teams coming through, I had to hand do draws for 200 teams. Now you try and do that and make sure they have an equal share of the right time slots and don't play each other twice. It was a nightmare, but it taught me a lot of skills that I ended up being able to utilise later in life. From there, went into an events business, running national sporting events around the country in triathlon and beach volleyball. But a cricketer came to Manly. His name was Michael Bevan. In fact, he got married here and emceed his wedding here.
Nice.
And he wasn't quite playing for Australia at the time, and he was on the verge of getting picked. And he said, "Look, I need a manager. Do you want to represent me?" I hadn't done any of this before. It was all new to me, but I love cricket and thought, I'll have a crack at this. How hard can it be? And anyway, I said, well, okay, let's start off your bat deal, because his bat deal was up with Kookaburra. And I said, what are you getting? And he said, about 20K. I said, all right, I think I can do a bit better than that. And so we mapped out a deal. Whatever I could get above 20, he'd give me my percentage of. Nice. I'll keep the percentage confidential for now. Anyway, cut a long story short, after speaking to a few bat manufacturers, managed to get him a deal for 250K if he played for Australia. 3 weeks later, got picked for Australia and Pakistan too, and at the time it was the biggest bat deal in the country, and I thought, how easy is this, talent management game? How hard could it be? So, but the point is, it gave me the confidence in my own abilities that I could do this, and I had no training or skills or anything to take on that role, and so it just landed. And that was almost 30 years ago, and I'm still doing it to this day and representing cricketers. So you have to be lucky, I guess, and sometimes you've got to be in the right place at the right place, right time. And the journey since has just taken me on all sorts of different paths, but talent management and cricket's been integral in all that, which, and ironically enough, the talent management side of my work took me into film production, and that's a whole other story that we might talk about later. But I think the point I'm trying to get across is that be as diverse as you can. So in my journey, I've been able to learn all about sponsorship, production, obviously talent management, sports marketing, running events. So the more you can learn along your journey, the better. And you'll find that if you have that diversity early on in your career, it'll open up doors like it did for me with film production, which I never thought I'd get into later in your career. So I think that's about it for me.
That's amazing, Andrew. Just in context, at that time, what year was that with the indoor cricket? Because indoor cricket, I don't know if you guys realise how big it was back in the day.
Huge,
just exploded.
83 to 91.
Yeah, so great opportunity, good start. Thanks, Josh.
Yeah, so for myself, I was basically sport obsessed from a young age. I played baseball and cricket in the summers, played representative baseball, cricket, played rugby league and union in the winters, and I was playing school rugby and representing. I started to push through there, and we had Gold Coast Chargers coach was with us, and Preston Campbell. I don't know if you know him there. They were with us at training, and he pulled me aside at training, and he goes, "Oh, you're wasting your time." And I'm like, "Oh, okay." And he goes, no, you've taken it the wrong way. He goes, you're wasting your time playing rugby union. You come over to rugby league. So next thing I basically was signing a junior deal with the Chargers, and then they went defunct. So that was a long-lived 6 months.
Not your fault though, Josh.
Yeah, exactly. Well. But so I went through there, and then I was slowly progressing through, and I had another team in Sydney was going to come and sign me when I was playing up in Brisbane, and I did my shoulder the week before they were coming to sign me there, and so kept pushing through. And it was my dad, he'd played for West in Brisbane and was going to come down to play in Manly down here, but he ended up, my brother was coming along, so I ended up choosing the work path there. But for me, I just kept pushing forward, and he said to me, you're crazy if you don't get yourself a career outside of sport, because, at 17 when I was there, I was just thinking, no, I'm just going to be made here, rugby league is going to be the future there. And I was getting told by the right people, you're going the right way. But I ended up just started in sports management, and I got a job with Gold Coast Rugby Union doing development work, and then all of a sudden met a couple of people, and they offered me a job just doing relationship management with St George Bank, and I sort of started on that thing while I was playing. I was like, oh, well, that's at least it's paying the bills, and it's got me a career outside of it. And I kept sort of pushing along those lanes, and went through, played Queensland Cup and Premier Grade Rugby, and then just had a few injuries here and there, and ended up going overseas and playing professionally for Gateshead Thunder. And went in the off season, and after the season finished, I ended up just going down to go to Wales to visit some friends, and played some games for Caerphilly. Actually wasn't supposed to be playing, that was under someone else's name, but it was they said whatever you do, don't talk on the field, which was hard for me, because sometimes you can't shut me up. So it's so I just went through that, and then I had a few really bad injuries in a row, and it made me sort of go, okay, well, I've got to pull back here. And then so from that, I had the banking and everything on the side, so I kept doing that. And I was pushing through. I was doing a lot of development work, a lot of coaching and things, just to really keep myself involved in the game, because it was a bit of a shock, transition out of the sport, thinking, this is going to be the lifelong career here, there. And it's just like, I finished playing properly when I'm about 25 sort of thing. So it was a hard transition for me to make, but I did have something outside. But I also said, this is the advice I've given to a lot of young players, is that even though you might have a career outside, it might not be exactly where you're going. So you sort of, you end up finding a path with that. And I started just doing some work, and Ben Eichen started mentoring me for a bit, and I was just really sort of saying, I really enjoy the coaching side, but I don't really love the X's and O's. I love the development on one-on-one players and do things like that. And then it was just things I was helping on the side with a couple of guys that lost their careers, and just started helping them find work and find a way forward. And it really got me on the wellbeing side. And now Ben's like, well, why don't you go to the Broncos and start helping out there? So I took a role with the under-20s, which it was really good back in the time then, because they couldn't come in before 5 o'clock. So I'd leave work, go straight to there, and just working long hours and that. And I found a real passion and real love for the wellbeing side, and just really what I can do to help sort of people grow positively inside and outside of the game. And it became a niche there. And then I was over in New York with my brother for New Year's, and I got a call. It's quite sad. I got a call saying one of my friends had taken his life, and it just really hit me. And I was like, I need to. What am I going to do here, there? And I said, look, my passion is outside, and I don't enjoy the banking side. I enjoyed the money, but I didn't enjoy anything about it. But the happiest I was when I was at the Broncos and worked there. So I said, okay, I've got to find it there. And funny enough, a couple of days later, I met an American girl, and we sort of went back and forth there. I picked up a role with USA Rugby, and it was I met them at a rugby business networking meeting, and they sort of said, hey, we've got these roles here, but we kind of have to piece together a role for you. So I was doing business development, I was doing player wellbeing, I was doing coaching and development. So it was basically 7 days a week, but it was quite a step back in money. So it was a bit of a challenge. Also moving to New York as well was a big thing there. But through that, it was through a couple of things. And when I was back home, just from time to time, I met with Paul Heptonstall, who was the head of the NRL wellbeing, and he said, we'd love you to start doing this elite athlete wellbeing course, because we think, we've identified you as someone we'd like to go in there, and obviously having this is going to help you get your foot in the door. And about a month after I'd finished it, I was sitting there and got a call saying, Justin Pascoe, the CEO of West Tigers, is in New York. Do you want to meet with him? And I said, yeah, sure. And had breakfast with him, and within a week, was offered a job and talked my partner into come back over to Australia with me. And then, so yeah, had 2 really, really good years. Although when I was at the States as well, I pulled my time. I was doing a lot of stuff with the Toronto Wolfpack Consulting, doing some scouting and different things there. Coached with the USA Rugby League team for the World Cup qualifiers, and I'm one of those people who just seems to like throwing everything they can at myself. I can just take them.
So Josh, there's a lot of sliding door moments going on there.
Yeah, yeah.
And that seems to be a common theme across everybody. Absolutely. Samara, I'm not going to go there about the injury just yet, but it's a pretty common theme. Everybody being adaptable, being resilient, and I guess Andrew, you coined the phrase being lucky, but you got to put yourself in that spot. It's just amazing how each one of you have had to adapt from your careers for different reasons. And I've just learned something about you today, Josh, that I didn't realise, that you'd played for Gateshead Thunder, and I knew I'd seen you somewhere.
Oh, really?
So there you go.
Probably seen you more on the physio table than actually on the
Yeah. So look, we'll move on to the next question. This one, it relates to our local business that we, Manly Wellness is a local Manly community business initiative, and we're encouraging locals in Manly and Balgala and extended parts of the peninsula to really take care and look after their health and well-being. And so it's fitting that we have the people to talk about that here and now. But I'm going to ask a question to each of you again. Let's just keep it really succinct and about what you actually do to stay healthy, stay focused and motivated. Samara, let's go.
Well, since we've been working from home,
Yep.
a lot more, something I try and do every day at the moment is take meetings walking on the phone, because I'm often in front of screens when you're on a meeting and emails popping up, Teams are going off, and I'm not actually present in the meeting because I have multiple
Don't hear
screens.
that. Don't listen to that.
So finding a place that's I'm focused and in the meeting, but also removed from the office has been a big one, and taking at some point in the day, whether it's a walk to go to get a coffee or, but removing myself from my desk is actually what I've been doing to try and keep that mental health.
Beautiful,
Yeah.
Thank you, Samara. And obviously here at ICMS we're on September at the moment, so I think my team's in front at the moment, so we're doing well. Wally.
That was the beauty of sport for me. If I'm training people, I like to train with people.
Yep.
So it keeps me fit. Although I do change my routine as I got a little bit older, but the focus isn't on max strength now, it's more on cardio and mobility to keep my surfing going up. But I also hang with positive, like-minded people. So you don't get the negative people all the time. You try to minimal time with them and spend more time with the people that you want to affiliate with and get a brighter future and a brighter mind.
Yeah, good call. Staying active, do something every day, whether it's walking or I've got a sauna at home, love having a sauna. If I don't get a chance to go for a walk or a run, I'll have a sauna, sweat it out. But it's very important you do that because your productivity levels will improve if you've got a healthy body, healthy mind, and it's pretty simple really. Just do something every week. And also, from my perspective, I always like to have a goal to aim towards, whether it be 1 week or 2 weeks or a month or something that you can aim towards, which when you start to lose a bit of focus, it can get you back on the job and say, right, that's only 2 weeks away. I've got to.
Is that on your fridge magnet, Andrew?
Yes. No, it's not.
Yeah, for me, just daily mindfulness. I'm really sort of just continually wanting to grow and learn about myself and keep sort of pushing forward. So yeah, the mindfulness. I've got a little dog, so I'm out with him in the morning, in the afternoon, just playing with him. So it's for. Partner doesn't love how much attention I give him instead of her, but it's fine. But it's really just trying to keep active as well, which is harder. I had an ankle reconstruction last year, which was it's sort of made it a bit harder. But yeah, just daily walks out with the dog and mindfulness every single day. I haven't missed it in almost 3 years.
Yeah, that's a really important aspect, mindfulness and being mindful and that resilience. So to maintain, I guess, a level head, levels, that's what we've got to return to because, everything else around you could be going nuts and, we've got to stay in control of what's going on. So thanks for that, guys. Another simple question, I won't ask it to everybody, but I'll highlight maybe one or two that because I know it's going to be quite an interesting question. Boyle, I'm going to target you first for this one, mate. And it's around what does an average day in the life of David Boyle on a training day, which might be leading into a major final for one of your officials. Let's go from 5:30 in the morning when you're up training.
Yeah, it's mine's probably an abnormal day.
Yep.
I work at the Stadium Australia, or Accor Stadium, and I live down the south coast. So my day alarm goes off at 4:50. I'm left by 5:20, and last night I left at 7:20 to go back home again. But that's professional sport as well, and still tidying up. I'm actually off to the UK tomorrow to a conference on my findings on the research. But generally, it's a 12 to 15 hour day.
Yep, that's interesting. Samara, I'll ask you that same question. What does a normal day look like for you?
I don't think there is a normal day. There's probably...
That's why I'm not going to ask Andrew.
Yeah, I don't think there is a normal day every single day. I mean, I've been at football for 4 years now, and my polite way of saying it is that there's never a dull day in the office, but it's a lot of meetings with internal departments to get things organised, but then I manage a lot of external stakeholders, so it's about then bringing them up to speed. It's a lot of people management and project management all day, every day, and making sure multiple people are across all the little details that they need to know to bring things to life.
Interesting. Yep, the students can attest to that. They know that's coming as well. Thanks you, Samara. So Andrew, I'll ask you another question, different question, and I'll target it more towards your talent. Well, you're looking after your talent that you have, and that highly scrutinised world of sport and sport media. What do you do to stay on top?
Yeah, it's a good question, Trev. It's talent management or player management. There's a lot of great components to it, but a lot of people don't see what goes on behind the scenes with crisis issues. The criticism, as you said, daily. Cricketers are scrutinised on a day. Every ball. It's not daily. It's every ball they bowl, or the batsman every time they get out. So I'll just give you two very quick stories which I think answer this question well. The first one is Mitchell Starc, who most of you probably know, who's one of my great friends and great clients. He's copped criticism his whole career. For 10 years, every season comes around, Mitch Starc, he's the first one that's going to get axed or dropped or sacked. And it went on before last year's Ashes series, and the late Shane Warne was probably the worst defender. But everybody else started to jump on the bandwagon, and to the extent that we weren't even sure if Mitch was going to get picked for the first test, which was ridiculous because his record is phenomenal. Anyway, he got picked, and that moment of the Ashes, he bowled Rory Burns around his legs, and for those who are into cricket, they'll understand, but for those that aren't, it was an iconic moment in the Ashes. He got a wicket on the first ball of the series, which is unheard of. I don't know how many times it's happened in cricket, but hardly ever. And you could see the emotion come out of Mitch, and that was a result of all the scrutiny that he'd had to endure, not just for weeks leading into that match, but for 10 years of his career. And finally, they've started to get off his back now, and he's about to become one of the greatest cricketers of all time, about to take 300 tests. Second quick one is Jessica Watson, the round-the-world solo sailor. A lot of the young people here may not know of her story, but you will in a few months when it comes out on Netflix. But I got a knock on the door at 3 o'clock in the morning, and she was a 16-year-old sailing solo non-stop around the world. So imagine going out here in a 34-foot pink boat and sailing around the world for 210 days non-stop. It's like unheard of. So the Queensland government had reservations about it before she left. Anyway, first night of a sea trial, she runs into a 30,000-tonne cargo ship, 225-metre cargo ship. Survived just. I got a knock on the door at 3 o'clock in the morning. Said, you need to get to Queensland. Jessica's sailing back in. I'm going, oh dear, this is not going to go well. And it didn't. We got hammered in the media. The family got hammered. I got emails saying I've got blood on my hands if I let her go around the world as her manager, and I've got a responsibility to stop her from going. And it was horrendous. And this went on. We fixed the boat over the next 3 weeks, and then she set sail. But it was non-stop scrutiny every single day. Fast forward 210 days when she sailed just through the heads out here. It was one of the great moments in Australian sporting history, and it just stopped the nation, it stopped the world to the extent that there's a feature film being made about her. So it just goes to show there's the bad side of the scrutiny, but there's also the good side, both for Mitch, what he did, and for Jessica, what she achieved.
Beautiful. Great stories. Thanks, Andrew. Josh, I'm actually going to focus on a question you raised earlier about the context that you bring in the transition from playing to going into an occupation in sport. Now, I know you've had a bit of issues and a bit of luck here and there. You put yourself in about, but what would you say are give a couple of main important tips around what it actually looks like when you're transitioning from an athlete into another career? Because, and I'll tell you why I'm asking that question after.
They say basically it's almost like losing a life first there. So like everything you've known and learned, like especially for someone that's been full-time NRL or full-time in a sport there, your life revolves around that. Most of the time you're given a plan, you're given everything there. All of a sudden you're out in the real world and rarely people care that you were an ex-athlete or anything like that. So it can be a bit of a shock for those sort of people there. So one of the reasons we actually started Athletes for Life was because there was just such a gap, because a lot of the sports say they look after them for about 12 months, but it's a lot of times that after 12 months, they normally take that, it's almost sometimes a gap year, but then after that 12 months, problems can start setting in and then all of a sudden reality sets in that you haven't got anything to go to, and especially rugby league, rugby union, careers are very short-lived, so I think that's the one thing there. So I think make sure people are trying. It's what I try to teach was to be prepared before you're there. So try and study and get what are there. But you might have studied and it might not be what you want to do. But at least you've got a backing, so you can actually start in something and kind of push into something there. So I think that's definitely the thing. To make sure you're prepared, but also getting to know yourself. Like the resilience and the self-efficacy, really knowing what makes you tick, is going to help you in your path going forward, because it's just you need to know yourself to be able to help yourself push forward. And I think that's going to be the hardest thing, because especially when a career can end straight away and when you're not expecting it and things like that, it as I said, it's like a slap in the face. So it's like all of a sudden things come there, so you just have to be prepared and plan A, plan B, plan C, basically.
Yeah, beautiful. The reason I asked that question, obviously, I wrote a PhD. It was the first PhD of its kind around the transition of athletes, and I looked at their physical and their mental health from when they retired from playing rugby league. You mentioned career's short. I mean, I was very fortunate. I had a 12-year professional career, played nearly 300 games. So, and Boyley's the same scenario. Playing professionally in rugby league he's going to present to the UK SCA on Saturday. The sport that we played, three of us, is not a contact sport. It's actually a collision, stroke, violence, unheralded sport that we just put up with. Nowadays, it's a lot more protected. So there's Richard, love you, Richard. There's cameras everywhere. Yeah, you can't get away from the cameras. But in our days, in mine and Boyley's days, there were only one camera, probably on the sideline, if you're lucky. So there's no angles that they can call on. Boyley, how many camera angles do the videos get called on, the referees?
9 cameras.
9 cameras they can call on to see what's going on in that point in time. So, I'll tell a couple of stories about Boyley later, but we'll get to know each other a bit better now. So, Samara, I'm actually going to go there for now, because I know Josh has led into that point around careers and injuries. So, firstly, can I ask, are you over it? Yes, that's a safe question. So I know, because we've been there, we've all been there. We know what it's like. So, do you mind just telling us a little bit more about how that happened? Because I'm going to come to these guys with another leading after that as well. Sorry, Boyley.
Yeah, so I got chronic fatigue right before the games, and okay. I mean, as a water polo player, you train 5 hours a day every day. You're up at 10 to 4 in the morning, 2.5 hours training before uni, work or school,
yep.
2.5 hours training after work, school, home at 10 p.m, back up before 4 the next morning. So I thought training had just really kicked in,
yep.
And that's why I was so tired. But my legs stopped working in the middle of nationals, and my body basically just shut down.
Yep.
And the doctor kind of said, if you want any shot at a healthy life, this kind of lifestyle is not for you anymore. And then, it was really hard. I literally collapsed at the bottom of the stairs. Some of you have had my brother coach you, Jeremy, through different parts here, but he physically carried me back up the stairs where I got that news that, you can't do this anymore. Social sport wasn't really for me. I'm very competitive. But it was really hard. My dad had a career-ending injury. He played for New Zealand for 16 years. And so I was very lucky that I had an incredibly supportive household and someone who could relate to what I was going through. But it was really hard. And at Optus, they did a biopic on me. And one of the things I said, which was so true, is, I just became this girl with big shoulders for no reason. Like, that's kind of how I felt. Like, everywhere I went, I was like, oh, that's the water polo girl. It was the title that you had, and it was how you identified, and it was everything you ever worked for. And I think having a very supportive system at home, my dad's now a motivational speaker, I learned to see everything good that it had given me instead of everything that it could have given me further on. I travelled the world. I met my very best friends to this day. It taught me every single skill that has got me to where I am in my career, more than any academics ever has. And I think just learning for what were the good things, it was in that, and taking that on board and realising that just because I couldn't play it didn't mean it was over. I could still live in it. I still train every single day today, but like you guys have said, the training has changed, and it's about how to keep myself healthy and mobile, and not how much can I hurt every day, which is definitely what, especially when I was training, you were a cog in a wheel, and it was how much hurt can you put your body through. Yeah,
because you don't want to come second to anyone.
No, Did you throw up after training? You didn't train hard enough.
Exactly.
So I think that mindset as well has changed with it.
And that mindset's actually, I guess, what's driven most of us. Just having that, I guess, determination, which is ingrained. And it sounds like a lot of it's been ingrained from your family upbringing. Would that be fair to say, most family upbringing? It's not, the harder it gets, the better you get as well. Thanks for sharing that, because I know that could be really tough. I mean, technically I'm an exercise physiologist, so trained, so I understand what chronic fatigue is all about. And less is better, not more. But anyway, okay, thanks. Andrew, I'm actually coming to you again for a different question, because it's really around where you see the growth in business. Where do you think the growth in business and sport's going?
I can speak on behalf of the sport that I largely represent, which is cricket, and that's 2020 cricket, and it's changing the game really. The opportunities are there for young people now to set themselves up for life by the age of 25. They weren't there 5 years ago. Now there's 2020 leagues all around the world, and the opportunities are there. The downside is it means that Test cricket hopefully remains, but it's taking a hit because some of the lesser known nations like the West Indies, South Africans, they're leaving to go and play and chase the money in these 2020 formats. A lot of people ask me this question, well, what do you advise your players to do? I said, well, everyone's different. So if you've got a young kid who's got a family or a wife or whatever, and he gets offered $1 million for a 6-week contract, how do you advise him to say no to that? It's great for them, but as a traditionalist in cricket, I don't like it. I like the fact that there's opportunities there, but I don't like the fact that it's overtaking the whole game. And the second thing you touched on earlier, and David did, about the cameras are everywhere, and social media and the digital world we live in now. We didn't grow up in that world, but now it can make or break careers. There is a place for it, I get it, with influencing and getting messaging out for sponsors, but I don't like it. And I always tell my players, if you're going to write something stupid when you've had a few drinks, just sleep on it and wait till the next morning before you do it, because it can break careers, and I've seen it happen. So to me, that's the biggest change really in cricket and the digital world. It's just exploded like nobody. When I worked next door to John Singleton probably 20 years ago, and he said this, he said that the digital world is going to kill TVCs, 30-second TVCs. John Singleton's one of the famous advertising gurus in the country, and he was right. He had a vision 20 years ago that it was going to go down this path. So.
That's partly where it's gone, for sure, 100%. Josh, in your context about, because you've started a new business, you've really focused on it, and you've got a lot of good skills that have come back from your actual career. So, but where do you think that's going now? Where do you think that, because I know the wellness in rugby league is, the NRL are really pushing it. We have a lot of Indigenous ex-players that are working in that space because of the high percentage of Polynesian players in the NRL. But where do you think it's going outside of the NRL. How does that wellness, because I'll come back to Samara soon about how that affects other sports, but in your context.
I think it's grown substantially in that sort of side, and a lot of the stuff that used to sort of be heaped on that's well-being is now it's starting to be separated, and it's actually starting to be seen for what it is. Is a performance driver in terms of what it's doing, but instead of just heaping everyone in there, there's a lot of Indigenous engagement, there's a lot of Pacifica engagement now as well, and each sport is starting to sort of take a bit of ownership for it. There's still a long way to go, but it's definitely a lot of sports are already on the right path, and as the NRL is one of them that they've, because of it's been a long ingrained that, but there's still obviously ways to go with it, but I think it's going to keep growing and growing, the wellness space, and I think that the more that they can sort of bring it on, and it's picking up in terms of where its importance is, because obviously like in the framework it's normally coaching, high performance, and then sort of wellbeing sits under that. So I think the sooner it sort of starts getting pushed up a bit higher, like it's going to help, but it's also very hard because when you've got only a certain amount of time in a week, and you've got certain times there, you just almost have to pick and choose your times, and I think it's just about working in and around athletes' timings and what we can do, and just being, I guess just being adaptable to whatever situation comes.
Sure. And of course, everybody in the audience here has had to be adaptable over the previous 2.5 years because of the pandemic. So, Boyle, I'm actually going to come to you to answer the next question around what does the business of sport look like? Let's try and say post-pandemic. In your space, I know you guys had so many criteria you had to abide by. These guys had to leave their homes and go and live in bubbles and for an extended period of time. So what does the new normal look like, Boyle, if there is such a thing as the new normal going into sports business today?
Couple of areas here. So I guess being with the referees has taught me a lot. I was a strength and conditioning coach. I was a lecturer at a university, and I'm on the board of the ASCA. So with the students, it's how do I get into professional sport? How has professional sport changed? In 1994, we had a head coach, an assistant coach, a football manager, and a strength and conditioning coach. That was it. Now we've got 25 staff that the coach looks after, and wellness is one of them. So in terms of business and jobs, there's jobs there for you to create for you, and specialising. So there's a lot more specialised jobs. The women in sport now is very important. Massive. And it's boosting. And as Samara said that they've got 4 times the sponsors as what the male equal parts are. And that's it. It's great news. So there's plenty of jobs there. But also, on the other side of things, with our strength and conditioning coaches that move up into high performance, as a high performance manager, you've got to give up your trade. You've got to give up programming and working with them, because as a high performance manager, you're looking after their well-being.
People.
The whole of the athlete well-being. And part of my study was it's not all objective data. The objective data, we do wellnesses in the morning, and you've got to act on the wellnesses to show them that you care. And coaching's not all about now, is about emotional intelligence with empathy. And one of the quotes I had from one of the guys that I interviewed, my study was 14 interviews with head coaches and high performance managers, was, Boyle, we used to give them 3 slaps around the head and 1 cuddle. Now you've got to give them 4 cuddles. And that's the part of it, the societal changes that we've got to look at. So there's something really there that's really important. And we also talk about with our high performance managers is there's not in professional sport, as quick as you get a job, you lose a job. And I've worked at 7 organisations in rugby league and in basketball, but we always now in our courses with our high performance managers, what's plan B for you? And that's also happening in sport with the athletes. Try to encourage them to do a course and better themselves. But when you're looking at, and you guys are doing sports marketing, you've got to build your brand. You look in the mirror and you've got to build that brand, and that's going to give you a career. And then Andrew and everyone here has said, get advice from people. It's all about building your own brand. So really concentrate on that.
Nice, Boyley. That's awesome. That transitions well into the next sort of tranche of questions I'm going to ask. I'm actually going to ask the audience, the panel, to have just a think about the next thing I'm going to ask. And I'm going to leave it with you for a little bit, and I'll ask another question. So what I want you all to think about is, give me one or possibly two things that you're really, really thankful for. Yep. So I'll leave that with you for a sec. But while you're thinking to do that, I'll just provide a little bit more context around, I'll tell a little story about Boyley. It's come to that time. So we've known each other for 23 years, okay? So a fair chunk of our lives. But I first met him 27 years ago. I met him on the playing field. He was playing for Hull FC, I was playing for Featherstone Rovers at the time. And we had a bit of a clash on the field. Well, Boyley had a clash with me because I had no beef with him. So I've picked the ball up and run from dummy half, and he's just come around the corner and just clout me, whack, full stiff arm, and hit me. And I've looked at him and said, "What was that for?" He didn't even say a word. He just went, "Ah." He just gave me an almighty groan, and I just looked at him and thought, "Oh, okay." Well, just like that, is it? That was what David Boyle was like on the field. Absolutely no questions asked, nothing given. Then we got off the field, and I said, he came up to me and said, "Oh, hey mate, sorry, it was just the heat of the moment," and subsequently, we became friends for some reason. I don't know how or why, but we did. We became friends, and I met him again in 2000. We went together. We were S&C coaches. I was at the Warriors, and Boyley, who were you in 2000? Who were you working for at the time?
Dragons.
The Dragons. He was at the Dragons. He was a S&C coach at the Dragons. So we were both high performance coaches with NRL teams, and then we joined forces to prepare the New Zealand side, the New Zealand Kiwi team, to go away to the 2000 World Cup in the UK, which they're currently doing right now, preparing to go to the UK for the Rugby League World Cup. So that friendship has been there since that time. We've run into each other every now and then. We're both members of ASCA. David's a level 3 ASCA master coach, and I'm a level 3 ASCA elite coach. So we sort of run into each other all the time, and we've maintained that friendship. So I hope I've given you guys enough time to have a think about why are you thankful? What could you tell me, Samara? Something that you're really thankful for.
This is going to sound weird after what we just talked about, but when I got injured, and it was the biggest learning experience about myself that I've had today, and I wouldn't be where I am today if that hadn't happened. So it sounds weird, but it took 10 years. But I'm almost thankful that it did end, and it ended so abruptly, because I had to battle some demons at a very young age, and I don't think I would have I don't think I'd be the person I am today if I didn't have to battle that then.
Wow.
Yeah.
Powerful. Thanks, Samara. We'll drop Boyley, we'll carry on, we'll go Andrew.
Mine's an easy one. It's Mike Pawley. Very thankful for him for putting the indoor cricket centre in down there. It's where I met my wife on the first week of the job, and we've been married 35 years and got my wedding date tattooed on my finger. There you go, it's my wedding ring. So thank you, Mick Pawley.
I'm just thankful for everything that my family has ingrained in me, and I think that's the resilience and that sort of side there. And also, I'm very similar to Samara. It's like the injuries and the adversity I've had to come through to go there has just taught me a resilience, and sort of really how I got to know myself and what made me tick, and really what was my drive in life. And I've found my passion and have been pushing towards it for the rest for that time.
Interesting, Josh, because you moved overseas without anything, you just did it. So what prompted that?
As I said, it was one of the thing that almost kicked me into gear was with my friend. He passed away, but it was just something I felt I really just needed to get out, and because I kept on going back to. I went over to Gateshead, went back to banking. It was banking was just basically, it was a fallback, and I knew I was good at it there, but I wasn't passionate about it, but I just said, I really need to change here. And it was basically going, okay, well, there's an opportunity over there. Why not just completely just shock my world and just go over there and try something different?
Well, you took that leap of faith, prompted by obviously an incident that you will keep forever. Absolutely. So yeah, it's powerful again. Boyley, down to you, my friend.
I got asked this question by an intern, but then I just thought about, and I think Samara, you might have said, or you Trev.
Yeah.
My parents, I just they moved from the country, and they moved to the coast, and it's just given me everything, sport, friendships, travel. It's just been great.
Yep. I'll actually, context a little bit about why I asked that question as well. I'm actually thankful for a lot of things, but I'm very thankful I still have my mum. Okay? Because I mentioned it earlier, if it wasn't obviously for your mum, but it's not just that. So everything I've ever done in my life my mum has always been there. Always. And still to this day, I'm going to see her next week, just quietly. Because my older son's getting married, so I'm going back home for a wedding. But my mum is still alive to this day. Now, she still flies my flag every day when I talk to her on the phone. I talk to her on the phone every day. Yep. And I'm 60 years of age, and I still ring my mum. So that's how thankful I am for my mum, right? So I don't know if it's probably Samara, because you said your parents and your family and your dad, really, they would have supported you so much getting through that tough period. Same with you, Josh, getting through that tough period, and you come through it. So that's awesome. So let's get back on track. Take a bit of breather here. I know we've had a lot of sport challenges, injuries and things like that, but can you give us any context? Have there been any mishaps along the way in sport business that we might like to learn from? Samara, have you got anything that you'd like to share?
I think it always just comes down to managing people.
Yep.
I had one of my younger cousins complaining about a uni group assignment and someone not pulling their weight the other day. I said, it's the same at work.
Oh, that's common.
And I think, again, it's the most criticised business in the world, but...
critiqued.
Yes. Everyone has an opinion on it, but I think mishaps, it's more about managing the people.
Yep.
And how you bounce back from the mishap. And managing people's expectations and not kind of dwelling on the mishap, because there's always another problem around the corner. This wasn't a mishap, but one of the never a dull day kind of situations where it was everyone had to pull together. Example of the first time I heard of COVID was on Australia Day in 2020. Got a call from my head of events saying, hey, the Matildas Olympic qualifiers are meant to be in Wuhan, China next week. And there's this weird thing happening there, so we need to stage this here in 7 days. So you need to put on 6 international matches in 7 days, get it on broadcast, sell tickets, book stadiums, get partners there, get people in the stands.
And you did it?
Yeah, we called it Fire Festival because we did not think it was going to happen. And then again, it was like, what if this doesn't, the Olympics might not even happen? And we were like, if.
Yeah.
And then, fair enough. But I think it is there are often mishaps along the way, and there's not really time to dwell on it.
Sure.
Work with the people and find a solution and move on.
100%.
Yeah.
So, Andrew, I'm coming to you.
Again, sorry to keep going on about cricket, but it's in my DNA, as I said earlier. Again, a Mitchell Starc classic mishap. He got an IPL deal about 5 years ago worth $2 million, and we said we should insure this in case you get injured.
Yep.
And so we did. We did a full medical, insured with Lloyd's of London, and every pre-existing injury was covered. So if that happened before the tournament, he wouldn't get his payout. Anyway, cut a long story short, the horrendous South African series, which will be remembered for all the wrong reasons, is where he got an injury in his leg, an injury that he'd never ever sustained before. And we just thought, it's a given that the insurance company would pay the amount. They didn't. They basically disputed it and pulled every trick in the book, Lloyd's of London, and it taught me that they were always going to pay and settle something, but we just had to spend hundreds of thousands of dollars fighting it to get to a position where Lloyd's of London would offer a figure. So we decided, do we drop this or walk away? And Mitch was adamant that he deserved the payout and the insurance company needed to pay for it. And to his credit, he ran the risk of losing hundreds of thousands of dollars. And sure enough, we went through the process. We had mediation. We did everything, every rule in the book, but the insurance company kept saying no. What happened? 2 days before we got to court, they settled and we got a payout. And the point, I was so proud of Mitch that he went through of it, because it was a nightmare. I mean, it's emotionally draining, it's financially draining, but the insurance company, I don't know how many people in the world have taken on Lloyd's in London and won, but we did, because we had our beliefs, and it was unfair what they were trying to do to him. So fortunately we got a good result. We didn't get the full payout, but we had to settle, which was the right thing to do rather than go to court.
Interesting. Josh, you got any gold nugget stories there?
Not so much a mishap. When I was at the Tigers, had the transition that Ivan Cleary was coach, and then I'd sort of done a lot of planning over the 6 months with him in terms of what we're doing in the player wellbeing side, what we're doing in the education side for the next year. And then all of a sudden Ivan left, went to Penrith, and Madge came in, and I was just thinking, oh yeah, it's just going to flow on, everything will be the same, and it's there, and it just totally, just completely changed, like, you know, almost polar opposite. So it was something that I had to adapt pretty quickly. It wasn't so much a mishap, but it was almost like I had to check my ego to say, hey, well, I've done all this work, but now a new guy's coming in, I've got to really adapt and change to suit what suits him, because what suited Ivan wasn't going to suit Madge. So I basically had to almost just knock it on the head after 6 months' work. So.
I was going to say, totally diametric opposed personalities.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, cool. Thanks, Josh. Boyle, I'm going to come to you, mate, to ask a question about, because you mentioned earlier about women in sport and diversity. From your perspective, working high performance in the NRL and the referees, because I know daily you deal with both genders in the sport. Where do you think it's going, and do you think is enough is being done to be more inclusive?
I think we're really on the tip of an iceberg there, where it's going to really slide down. I think we got the first $1 million soccer player over in England this year, was at the start of this year. And it's really growing in volumes. I know as the Australian Strength and Conditioning Association, we try to encourage women, like Janina Strout, she's one of our coaches at NSWIS. Yeah, she does the Olympic team, and I think that's where I remember you from, Samara, when I was working there. But I try to encourage her to do as many courses as we can, just to see the athleticism. She was at gymnastics, and then she's got 80 kilos swinging over her head doing a hang snatch. It's just unbelievable seeing women like that what they can do, because we went through the stage where females were going in professional sport, but they still had to work. They weren't getting enough to get funded, and that was having all sorts of effects to their bodies. You know, they were going on diets and just playing up with their bodies. So I think it's a really on a tip of an iceberg. You might like to share a bit more, Samara.
Yeah, it's really interesting, and I've loved working in it. And my mum was one of the very first Lady All Blacks, and hearing, you know, what it was like then versus now, even. And she's the biggest flag bearer there is when it comes to women's sport. She comes to all our games. She doesn't know anything about football, but she's just like, there's so many people here. And yeah, it has been really, really different, and especially in football with even everything happening in Europe. You know, Sam Kerr's making millions of dollars a year. I manage, you know, her and Nike, and, you know, her and Serena Williams are their you know, two biggest athletes that they invest in as a company globally, which is massive. And again, from a well-being point of view, it's really interesting on, you know, a lot of these players didn't earn the money they're even earning now a couple of years ago. Like it's just really skyrocketed, and what that means for them on how they should use that money, look after that money. Some of them, I think, need better management. there are people taking advantage of them, I think. But again, it means, we had the first equal pay deal here where our men and women get an equal split. And as a result, they have to be treated equally. They need the same amount of coaching staff. Both coaching staff have about 20, again, from, the full-time masseuses and dietitians and wellbeing managers. It means they don't have to work. It means their bodies are incredibly fine-oiled machines, and that they're not coming from a full day's work and then having to go to training and not being able to recover and have the proper training. And, what happened with the Euros and a few months ago, and the 3 biggest attended football matches globally this year have been women's matches.
Women's,
and we've got the World Cup coming here next year.
I wasn't going to mention that, but yes, the World Cup next year, Australia and New Zealand.
The draw comes out next week.
October 22nd.
It's going to be, it's kind of hard to comprehend. I think if you, even pre-COVID, if you said, in 2019, that this thing called COVID would happen, what would happen with that, but then also that women in Europe would be outselling men in football, you'd be like, both of those are just as unlikely to happen.
I know, yeah. So, you've got a couple of big years coming. Yeah, the FIFA World Cup is absolutely massive, and I know I saw all the sites, the team-based camps and the actual venues, and that's one of them is my hometown, Hamilton. So there's going to be really lots going on over the next couple of years. Look, we have come a long way in a very short space of time. There's a couple of other questions that I might ask that might throw you just a touch. Now, Samara, you mentioned about the Olympics recently. Who would have thought the Olympics would have been cancelled? And then rerun a year later. I know, well, delayed by a year. Look, so Brisbane 2032. What does Brisbane 2032 actually look like in terms of sport business? What's going to be available? Where are we going? I know it's in Brisbane. I know we're in Sydney here right now, but there are so many avenues opening in sport and associated with sport business linked to Brisbane 2032. What do you guys think is going to happen? Andrew, I'll start with you.
Well, I experienced the 2000 Olympics, which was just incredible. When the whole city stopped, it was, and I think Samara said at the time, this is the best Olympics ever. Probably still is.
Yes.
So Brisbane's got to beat Sydney.
Yes.
But to answer your question, it's going to open up a plethora of opportunities in the business of sport. And for you guys, the demographic you're in now, take advantage of it if you can, because if you've got, I know a lot of my very good friends worked at the Olympics and ran events there, and it opened up so many opportunities for them afterwards, whether it be working for commercial partners or NGOs. It is in Brisbane, you're right, but it's only a few months of your life. And my advice would be, if any of you get an opportunity to work there, take it. I know it's 10 years away, but that'll come around pretty quickly.
Yep, you've established your footing. Anyone else like to?
Yeah, I guess the sky's the limit with it, really. I think it's going to grow, but it's not just going to grow in Brisbane. I think the state sporting associations, everyone's going to be throwing lots and lots of money in, because they're going to want, obviously, that to be successful for on the field and off the field activities. So I think it's really, it's going to explode, and I think it's a really exciting time for sport, and it's going to be just opportunities left, right, and centre. So reach out and grab them wherever you can, and really just grow with it, because it's just I think it's going to be a really exciting ride.
And those opportunities will come up. Those opportunities won't be 10 years away. They'll come up within 5 years, because it'll be a 5-year planning phase.
Just in time for your graduations. You'll be ready to go. Samara, I know the FIFA World Cup's here and next year as well. So, but let's say post then, and some of our students have got a foot in the door. What's next for the FIFA women? Well, for world, for football. Where are they going?
Well, again, we've done a lot of modelling on what it means for participation afterwards, and we have a big program based on what's our legacy going to be, and it was a big part of us getting the funding of, we don't want it to come and disappear and it didn't mean anything, but what does it mean for the country? What does it mean for sport? What does it mean for women's sport? And then what does it mean for football? Kind of holistically, and the participation rates that will grow, and therefore actually what do we need to start doing now in regards to infrastructure, in regards to getting more coaches, in regards to creating pathways. It's a whole, you can't have 600,000 new girls rocking up wanting to play football, and then you have to turn them away because you don't have the pitches and you don't have the coaches and you don't have the
not in place.
Or the pathways for them. And, you know, we have an amazing team at the moment, but it's how do we make sure that the next generation, because a lot of them might disappear after that and the Olympics in Paris, but how do you keep the pathway coming? And I think that's a big part of what the Olympics does is participation. And I know the Olympics themselves are very good at leaning into that with their Have a Go. And, you know, I've done a whole Olympic cycle, and it's really about the growth of the sports and people either falling in love with random sports they've never seen before or wanting to take them up. And I think that's really the biggest impact that an Olympics that there's the Women's Basketball World Cup's on now, the Women's Football World Cup is on, the Rugby World Cup is coming, all of these big global events, really it's about the increase in participation. And because when increase in participation happens, the whole sport grows and therefore the whole business grows, if you have the right things in place, hopefully, which means that more jobs come through, more money comes in, and therefore hopefully the pathways get better, the resourcing gets better, and it all kind of tumbleweeds into a much better overarching experience.
That's massive. So we all know these events are coming. We all know that they're already been planned. So what Samara is saying is the lead is one thing, it's the tail. So, and to sustain those connections, and there's opportunities are just as big going out of an event as they are leading into an event. And that's where we get that sustainability, holding on to those opportunities. So what we're going to do now is, we've had enough questions, and Nicole's going to do a wonderful job for us here. We'd like to throw the question time over to the floor, and if anybody has a question, if you haven't already prepared your questions, here's the opportunity for you to ask any question now of the panel or anyone else. So just put your hand up so Nicole can see you. Yep, there's at the back. Yep.
So mine in particular is for David and Andrew, just because those are two industries I'm particularly interested in. Do you think that what you're doing now with both high performance, athlete management representation, do you think that you can sort of enter that industry straight away, or did you sort of have to establish yourself somewhere else and segue into it? And then to sort of a second part to that question is, do you think that a woman trying to enter into those industries, do you think, you know, I might be of a lesser advantage to someone else?
The answer to your first question is you're never young enough to get into talent management. You just have to look, listen and learn. I know you can't go out and do things at 20, 21, 22. It takes time to be an agent. I think there's only 300 of us in the country across cricket and NRL and AFL, so there's not many. There's only 300 positions. Does gender come into it? Absolutely not. I have philosophy. You pick the best person for the job. It doesn't matter what gender they are. And I think the growth of women's sport, which we've touched on already, has exploded in cricket as well. It's actually creating more opportunities, as Samara touched on, that a lot of these female players need good representation, and there's not enough out there. So absolutely, there's opportunities. So don't be discouraged to think you have to be in it for 10 years or your gender will work against you. It actually won't. Use that as an advantage.
Yeah, that's tied into what Samara's saying previously as well.
The beauty of sport now is the availability of internships. So that's where you want to put your foot in. Even if you want to work with athletes, it's understanding athletes. So if you can get a job as an intern, you might be just getting them towels and cleaning up and water and offering hydration, but you learn about the athletes, and that gives you a big impression.
Cool. Yeah. So, yeah, simple answer. Go for it. Go for it. Samara's definitely got more opportunities coming. Any more questions?
Don't be shy. Let's go.
Yep. Sam.
Hang on, give me a sec. I'm not in sport, I'm in fashion.
Hi everyone. So as you can hear, I have a South African accent, so don't have any harbour any feelings of hatred towards me for the cricket. I have a question. So I'm in marketing, and most of you here, besides Josh, or maybe you have had some experience, but what is your feelings towards, perhaps Samara, this is a question for you, is what are your feelings towards sort of getting people invested in a brand? I know a lot of people nowadays speak about authenticity, communicating that authenticity, but how do you get people to buy into a brand?
Well, my husband's South African, so no love lost there. In my current job, I've been very lucky that when the World Cup was announced was going to be here, we kind of had every brand under the sun coming to us, and we get the opportunity to pick, which has been really nice. And all of our new partners that come on board, we almost vet them as much as they vet us on, are you genuine about investing into the sport, into growing it, into profiling it? There's stuff around that built into contracts around that. And I think there's a reason that the word sponsorship has changed to partnership. It's about what are your objectives, what are my objectives, and how can we do them together? And I think if you're not aligned and brands don't buy into each other, it's never going to work. They're not going to re-sign, you'll lose that business. And we've been really, really fortunate, I think, in my current role that we have partners who are really invested and kind of put their money where their mouth is, not just in giving us money, but then spending their own money. It was something that was a really hard sell internally when I was at brand side at Telstra and Optus, but there's the funds that you need to sponsor the team. You need that same amount of money, if not double, triple, to then make use of it and bring it to life. And so having partners say, not only will we give you the money, but we are going to spend, we're going to put Matildas on billboards, I think is really important. And it's about storytelling. I think that's the biggest part of that is, and being able to articulate what is our brand, what is your brand, and how do they align. And if you don't have authenticity, then consumers see through it. I know sport gets, critiqued a lot. Whenever we announce a new partner, it gets critiqued. We announced Subway as the Socceroos naming rights partner last week, the biggest deal the Socceroos have ever done. Almost every comment on social media is bagging them about that. But it was a genuine brand fit. It's a massive investment in the sport. So I think it's about storytelling, being open, and actually having a genuine partnership and buy-in with each other.
Yep. So we won't talk about the NRL's main sponsors then. Any other questions? One more question? We can even open up to the lecturers. If there's one more question. Staff. Ali.
Hi guys, my name's Ali. I'm one of the lecturers here. Just a question that I have. Since a lot of you have had diversity of roles and diversity of industries, what's one trait you would encourage the kids to work on or focus on that is transferable and has set you up in good stead?
For me, it's relationships. Whatever industry you get into, it doesn't matter how diverse it is, it's relationships.
100%.
An example from my career is that sometimes I'd be tired at the end of a week and I'd have to go to a function that I didn't really want to go to. I'd go to it and met the most amazing people who end up becoming lifelong friends, and you do business together. So it's so crucial at a young age, because you'll be surprised once you guys get out and you start your careers. The people that you meet, if they like you early on, it's incredible how often you run into. Look at all the companies and brands that Samara's worked with. It's like and we were talking earlier before we came in about a mutual friend we had from Optus. So it's so crucial to be a good person and have good relationships. And sometimes you might be dealing with not so nice people, or dickheads as we call them in the industry, but you just have to say yes sir, no sir, and you'll earn your stripes. So just relationships is everything. I just can't stress, no matter how smart you are or the best degrees you got, your best job you've got, but if you don't have good relationships with people, it comes back to bite you in the bum and haunt you later on in your career. And on the other side of the coin, if you can establish those relationships early on, you're going to have a good, successful career.
I think it's about making sure you understand what your brand is as well. Like all of us were kind of all had a mutual contact, just we figured out in the back room there. And it's, when you say that person, do you want to be like, oh, that person's great? Like if someone mentions you to someone else, do you want them to turn around like they're a great person, you would love working with them? And so therefore, what is that of you? I've been on shoots where I had to iron Kevin Peterson's pants, like it's you never being above the smallest job in the room. We find that on match days, the most senior person in the room, we're like, I'll go stack the chairs or I'll go tape that up. I think it's about making sure you put up your hand for everything. You're never above the smallest job in the room and manage, because it's about managing relationships, and it's, especially in Australia, it's a very, very small world.
People first. Put people first. That's one of my philosophies. Thanks, Ali. Thanks for that question, my friend, the marketing lecturer here at ICMS. Phil? So, yeah, without further ado, we might wrap it up here.
Sure. Well, I'm sure everyone has found this evening or this afternoon very insightful. It's not often you get access to some of the best minds in the business of sport for free and ask your questions as you see fit and appropriate. So I'm sure you would all join with me in saying thank you and congratulating our panel here this afternoon. So thank you very much.
And congratulations, guys.
So I'm sure you guys have heard stories before about people who have a spark moment in their career, just like you guys have mentioned as well. And who knows today, maybe you guys have sparked something in someone to kick off their sporting career even further in a certain direction. So thank you very much for all your time. We really appreciate it. So thank you. Before we get to some other thank yous for the panellists here, we've obviously spoken a little bit about wellness. It's been a bit of a consistent theme to this afternoon. And I actually believe the guys from Manly Wellness are here. If you guys want to quickly stand up for me. So on the 12th of February, there is a Manly Wellness Day coming up, but obviously in sport particularly, and as I say in the business of sport, that wellness side, very proactive wellness now is really a strong theme coming through. So I would really encourage you guys, particularly at the start of your sporting career, to get an understanding and involvement in health and well-being. So when we do the networking afterwards, I would strongly encourage you all to catch up with these guys, have a bit of a chat about what's upcoming in the local area, but also just get a bit of insight into it for your careers, both sporting or professional. So thank you for joining us today. Lovely to have you here, and the guys will come have a chat to you shortly. Thank you very much. No worries. So the other exciting piece we have today is obviously a couple of NRL backgrounds here. Actually, who's the tip? Who should I put my money on this weekend?
Penrith. It's pretty simple.
Penrith? Oh, Penrith, right. I'll come to you for a refund if it's wrong. We actually have Kane here, who a lot of you know. So Kane, do you want to jump up here for a second? For everyone who turned up today, we actually put you in a bit of a raffle to win 2 grand final tickets. So you can take me or you can take Kane, doesn't matter who you want to pick. But have you shuffled them? You shuffle? I thought you were a sports student. Shuffle them. Okay, cool. All right. Whoa, who's that?
Henry Cox.
Is Henry here? Hey, congratulations, Henry. Come on up. Oh, mate, congratulations. Who are you going to take? My name's Phil.
I'll take Dad, probably. Okay.
Yeah, that's fair enough. That's fair enough.
Henry.
Well done, Henry.
Good answer.
Kane. Great job, mate. So a couple of thank yous for today. Kane, who just got up here. Kane, the operations team, Nicole was floating. Nicole over here. Thank you so much for putting on today. This is a fantastic operation. And to the panel here, we, as I said, appreciate your time. Dr. Clark for hosting and emceeing today. Really appreciate it. We actually have a couple of thank yous for you all for your time. So we really appreciate you coming along today to chat to our students here at ICMS, and I'm sure they've learned a lot. So thank you once again, and we'll do some networking now. So yes, thank you kindly.
The golden hour.